Well, since the audio quality since the mic on my tablet here is screwed up the um, here here is a new updated version of Long Island Western Railfaning Archives Volume 1 Part 2. It's time to talk about one of the Long Island Western's most well-known subsidiary road, the Red Creek and Eastern. When it comes to the history of the railroad, there are a few other sources that you can look online. But right now, it's time to talk about one of the most well-known locomotives, the KT5 series. KT5 started out as Mikados built for the Japanese National Railways, but with the arrival of the D-51s, they were then exported to North America. Most of them ended up in the U.S., and most of them were then tossed around from railroad to railroad. Most of them ended up on the Red Creek and Eastern, a supplement for the KT4s, which are built in like 1913, 1912. And here is 50. They were then the KT5s are then numbered 5400 to 5519. 5415 here was built on July 15th, 1915. Was then exported in August of that year. Entered revenue service. Sometime in January 1916. It would then later work the Hoboken Sand Patch and Hilly Troll Pass in New Jersey for most of its life before being retired in 1958. It was luckily saved from. It was then placed into storage until it was then saved in 1960. Until it was then saved in 1959 and was then evaluated for restoration in 1960. And its restoration started in 1964 and was then completed in 1970. It then ran for the Long Island Western for a few years for hauling excursions and freight before being overhauled in 1985, returned to steam in 1987, and was then overhauled again in 1994, returned to steam in 1997, and was then overhauled sometime in 2005 again, and then came back, and eventually sometime in 2020 it was named Hootow after Hootow for Genshin Impact. Here are some and as for Hootow still remains in service today with a few of her sister engines, and also was then converted to oil sometime in 2022. And here's the predecessor roads to the Red Creek and Eastern, such as the WNRS and the White River and Henrysville. These were then two separate railroads that interchanged together to create the RC&E. That then later create the RC&E in 1873. 2 years after this photo was taken. The WNRS was the White River and Southern, while the WR&H was the White River and Henrysville Railroad. The locomotive at top is Mogul number 6, which was built by Cooks in 1869. So it was still new. And the number 2 here, it was built in 1858, by Brooks. and it was then given a new tender in 1866. It was then its original tender here was, which its tender, which is right here, was then rebuilt in 1870, around the same time. A few months before this was then shot. Both railroads would then merge on July 9th of 1873, effectively creating the Red Creek and Eastern. Here's Hutao again, and passing by one of the abandoned dispatch towers. Making its way east. Well, in the foreground is an SW 1500 number 7203, switching a local out on the spur line. Red Creek and Eastern number 5 was then also Red Creek and Eastern number 5 can be seen here in 1899, making its way with another train. Number 5 actually started life as WRNS number 4. And was number 4, and was then actually built in 1870, so it was then relatively new. Again, another Cook product, and eventually it luckily mustered its way for revenue service. It was up until 1935, when it was then retired and then became the Centennial engine for the Red Creek and Eastern. Unfortunately, being its Centennial engine didn't save it from scrap necessarily, as it was then eventually it was then officially retired from being its Centennial engine in 1955. In 1953, and was then replaced by KT4 Mikado, which became the Red's new Centennial engine, which that was then replaced by yet another Centennial engine that was an SW1 diesel switcher. The Red Creek and Eastern doesn't have a Centennial engine today per se. But Hutao would roughly count and fill that role if as needed. So number 5 unfortunately met the fate of the Cutter's torch sometime in 1957, except for the boiler. The boiler and tender still exist along with the pilot truck, and a few other drivers and a few other parts for the locomotive still exist. And as for number 5 in its current state, it's currently at the River Park Rail Museum in Salem, Illinois. And is currently going under for restoration, as it was then sitting in storage for God knows how long. 1075 is another Red Creek and Eastern product. This time a Malay Pacific. This time a Pacific Malay. However, it was actually simple articulated. In 1075 was then built in 1922 by Baldwin. Came with the centipede tender, and then it mainly hauled freight, and eventually was retired in 1956. And also exist at the same place as number 5, but on stacked display. Here is the Akron Southern Rail Museum in Akron, Ohio, and another Red Creek and Eastern engine is being restored. The 080 series is rather interesting, as these were also being well known for having a larger role than just switching. These were also used for locals. Goes all the way up until the end of Steam. And this is number 6, currently under restoration in 2012. As of right now, it's not operational at the moment because it's undergoing its boiler rebuild. In 1951, the Red Creek and Eastern also got newer power to supplement for the steam engines, as they were on their way out during the 50s. Utah can be seen here in this passing sighting, while a couple of the B-52 class gas turbines from Alco and General Electric make their way with another freight, as seen here on Hidley Trail Pass and a stop sighting on the Hoboken Sand Patch. Here's number 7. Which is another 080, but this time an oil burner, and was another Centennial engine. And was going to be the Centennial engine, but didn't really come close. But however, it was well known for working locals in the Norfolk area of Virginia near Roanoke. As seen here. Number 7 also still exists, and is also under for a 1472 2-day inspection. And is also getting rebuilt. And its restoration is almost done, but not quite. Here is the AG. Here's one of the railroads that the Red Creek and Eastern would then later acquire, the AG&S, which is the Alabama, Georgia, and Southern. What I mean by acquire the railroad's assets, as it was way too far away from the Red Creek and Eastern to actually be merged. The AG&S was another railroad that was built in the early 1870s, and 722 here was one of the railroads. It's 2440 O'Malley's, built in 1905 by Alco. It was then retired in 1941 and was then broken up for scrap sometime in 1947. So it no longer exists either. However, its sister 734 is the only survivor and is currently at the Southern State Rail Museum in Georgia. Here is more of the B-52s, this time 1724 with an FB unit in 1950, supplementing for another broken down steam engine. And shifting to the Long Island Western, Red Creek and Eastern before then did stick with the K series. Did also different varieties of Mikado, such as the AB1. These are built between 1910 and 1912, and they were drawn between 1940 and 1956. Most of the ones that were drawn later on were then rebuilt into KT. Were then rebuilt into what some believe to be the KT7 series of Mikados. However, only 42 were rebuilt out of the 375 that were built. And they weren't all that common, and only 2 of the AB1s still exist. Number 6253 and 6291. And in the background is the Long Island Western 65th Centennial Electric. built in built here in 1912. To celebrate the 65th anniversary of the LIMW. It was built by Baldwin and General Electric again, and operated through the 20s before being involved in a bad wreck as seen here in 1956 when unfortunately its third rail, while it was operating over a stretch of line on the outskirts of New York City, the third rail was then left lowered and eventually got caught and due to improper maintenance, the contact shoe then hit the ground, then hit the rail, causing sparks, causing arcing, sparking, and a fire, and it then derailed over a switch, causing a few things to ground, and eventually it then came off the tracks here, suffering severe damage. It was luckily repaired, but at that point it was then retired, started in 1957, and it still exists as a stack display. It was first on a stack display at the Windchime Cog Railway for a while before being moved to an interurban rare museum in Iowa for display, where it then resides today with no plans for restoration as of now.